The Horus Heresy is Warhammer 40k's biggest, boldest, and most galaxy-shattering prequel saga. Set 10,000 years before the main 40k timeline, it tells the tragic story of how the Emperor of Mankind's favored son, the Balding Menace, Horus Lubrical, War Master of the Imperium, got a little too into the Chaos Gods and decided to burn the whole galaxy down.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
It's the ultimate story of betrayal as brother fights against brother in a massive civil war that makes the Clone Wars look like a bar fight. And the Horus Heresy novels are how we get all this delicious lore. The Horus Heresy series itself is 54 books long. Yes guys, 54 books. That's longer than some entire book franchises. And let's be honest, some of these books are essential and some are the literary equivalent of the Bount arc from Bleach. Utterly useless. So today I'm doing you all a favor and giving you a complete Horus Heresy reading guide. I'm going to tell you which books you must read, which you can skim, and which ones should be sealed in a vault and launched into the Eye of Terror. If you're new to the Horus Heresy, this will help you navigate the series without losing your mind. And if you're already knee-deep in the grimdark, well maybe this will just validate your rage at some of these silly books. So the way this guide is going to work is that we're going to go through every single book in the Horus Heresy series, categorizing them and how essential they are to the overall story, giving them one of three categories. First, must read. These books slap and are essential to the Horus Heresy. They're actually well written and packed with lore that makes the book worth reading. Second, we have optional read. Not required, but hey, if you really love a particular legion or just want more context, these books are worth checking out. And finally, we have skip. These books are a waste of time, and if you value your brain cells, don't bother with them. I will additionally be grouping each book together, so to both save time and help you guys understand which book covers which legion or battle, but mainly to save time since I'm a silly cow with a lot of other things to do. Who else is gonna take the drugs, guys? Stick around to the end and I will give you a chronological timeline of what order you should read these books in, followed up by the fastest way to read them and still understand the complete story of Horus being a degenerate son. With that said, the Horus Heresy is still long as heck, so we better get started. Some books are legendary, others are so bad they feel like a word bearer wrote them, and some are written by Gav Thorpe. And we all know how I feel about Gav Thorpe. So let's break it down and figure out which Horus Heresy novels are actually worth your time. We're kicking things off with the first four books of the Horus Heresy: Horus Rising, False Gods, Galaxy in Flames, and Flight of the Einstein. All four of these books are essential. They're the foundation of the entire heresy, showing Horus's fall to chaos and the very beginnings of the galaxy going straight into the meat grinder. You get Horus's direct corruption, the betrayal at Isstvan III, and the desperate escape in Flight of the Einstein. And honestly, the characters here are phenomenal. You have Loken, Saul Tarvitz, Nathaniel Garro, and a bunch of other absolute units that carry the story. That said, Horus's fall is handled super badly. It's actually hilarious. False Gods is the only one of these four that makes me genuinely question my own sanity. Horus goes from being the galaxy's best boy in Horus Rising to an absolute prick in False Gods with almost no warning. It's such a weird 180, it deserves its own separate video. And trust me, that's coming. In conclusion, the first four books are absolute must-reads, especially if you want to truly understand where shit hit the fan. The next books we're talking about are Fulgrim and Legion. Two Legion-centered stories that dive deep into betrayal and corruption. Fulgrim focuses on, well, Fulgrim and the Emperor's children as they slowly fall to Slaanesh and what they do during the Dropside Massacre. Legion is similar, but focuses on the Alpha Legion's betrayal, even though their reasoning makes zero sense. Yeah, I'll trust this shady alien organization and backstab my dad. Seems like a great idea. Even though both Traitor Legion's falls aren't handled perfectly, these are still fantastic books that show off their legions in a really unique and memorable way. Fulgrim is a masterclass in how the Emperor's children fall from grace. It starts with a beautifully twisted portrayal of their obsession with perfection, art, war, even their damn armor is immaculate. But as chaos slithers its way in, that pursuit of perfection curdles into madness, excess, and some truly unhinged behavior. By the end, it's less refined warriors and more ketamine-fueled murder cult with a soundtrack by the Noise Marines. It's gloriously insane and a great read. Legion, on the other hand, flips the script entirely. It dives deep into the Alpha Legion and shows how they don't just fight wars, they manipulate them. Subterfuge, misinformation, double agents, and plans so convoluted, you'll need a conspiracy board to keep up. It's mysterious, clever, and cool as hell, and it also has one of the best endings in the entire series. Both are not just bangers, they're core to understanding the heresy and what makes these two legions tick. These two are must-reads. Next up is the Dark Angels trilogy. Descent of Angels, Fallen Angels, and Angels of Caliban. Yes, all three have angels in the title. Yes, it's lazy. No, I don't know how that got through the editorial process without someone raising an eyebrow. But anyways, let's talk about these books. First off, we have Descent of Angels. This book is painfully slow. It's supposed to be the origin story for the Dark Angels. How they purged the warp beast from their home planet of Caliban, found the Emperor, and joined the Great Crusade. Sounds cool, right? Yeah, no. What you actually get is a medieval knight drama with barely any action, a glacial pace, and zero payoff unless you're really into Calibite politics, and forest clearing. It's one of the most boring entries in the series, hands down. And if you're not a die-hard Dark Angels fan, this book is a struggle. Next, we have Fallen Angels. This one's a mixed bag. It's split between two different storylines. One on Caliban with Luther and the Seeds of Rebellion, and another with Lionel Johnson on Dymat during a siege. The Luther storyline? Actually pretty solid. Watching him and the Fallen slowly turn against the Imperium has tension, betrayal, and actual stakes. The Lion storyline, though, an absolute snooze fest. It's dry, slow, and worst of all, it makes the Lion look like a socially inept man-child. Like he straight up executes Nemiel for no reason. And you're just left wondering how this guy commands an entire legion without setting himself on fire. Finally, we have Angels of Caliban. Fast forward to the Imperium Secundus arc, aka Gilliman thinks Terra is dead, so let's make a new Imperium. This book has potential. On one hand, Luther finally declares independence on Caliban. On the other, the Lion is off in Ultramar, trying to track down everyone's favorite Batman, Conrad Kurz. There's some awesome fight scenes, especially between the Lion and Kurz, but the rest feels like wasted potential. The Lion basically bombs part of Ultramar on the off chance that Kurz might be there. Spoiler, he's not. The Lion continues his streak of looking like a complete jackass. It's like every book in this trilogy takes turns nerfing his IQ. The final verdict? This trilogy is the definition of mid. It's not completely worthless, but outside of the Luther stuff, it's mostly a snooze. If you're a big Dark Angels fan, or a completionist, give it a go. Otherwise, these three books are optional reads. You're not missing much except your will to live. Oh boy, where do I even start with this one? This book is the very definition of bolter porn. Non-stop action, minimal plot, and basically zero impact on the wider heresy storyline. The premise, Logar, everyone's favorite chaos preacher boy, has built a massive super battleship to wipe Ultramar off the map. A ragtag group of loyalist marines intercept it, and through blood, sweat, and way too many heroic sacrifices, managed to blow it up. Cool, right? Well, plot twist, Logar has 2 more of these ships just chilling in reserve. So yeah, all that death, all that action, all that page count for absolutely nothing. The mission was basically a glorified speed bump. Even the community agrees. This book is completely skippable. It contributes nothing to the main arc, doesn't develop any major characters in any meaningful way, and mostly just exists to fill a slot in the lineup. So guys, skip Battle for the Abyss, save yourself the time and brain cells, unless you really love watching bolters fire for 300 straight pages. Ah yes, Mechanicum, one of the only books in the entire Horus Heresy that actually focuses on the tech priests of Mars. Because surprise, surprise, Games Workshop would rather write about Space Marines flexing in power armor for the 40th time than give the Martian toaster cult some love. But Mechanicum, it delivers. This book dives deep into the Martian Civil War, a massive conflict that breaks out when half the Mechanicum decides to pledge allegiance to Horus, and the other half remains loyal to the Emperor. It's a war of logic versus heresy, of machine gods versus the reality-bending tech cults, and it's got big implications that ripple through the entire heresy. And let's talk about the Dark Mechanicum. This book is basically their coming out party. Forbidden AI, warp tech nightmares, tech heresy turned up to 11, it's juicy stuff and barely touched on anywhere else in the series. Honestly, I love this one. It's weird and a welcome break from the constant Astartes soap opera. So, Mechanicum is a must-read, especially if you want to understand the Mechanicum, the Dark Mechanicum, and why Mars has become a burning hellscape for the rest of the heresy. Next up, we have the anthologies. And oh boy, there are a lot of them. I'm clumping them all together since I'm both a lazy fuck and there's just way too many of them to go over. So that's Tales of Heresy, Age of Darkness, The Primarchs, Shadows of Treachery, Mark of Kauth, Legacies of Betrayal, War Without End, Eye of Terra, The Silent War, Corax, Garo, Shattered Legions, Talarn, The Burden of Loyalty, Born of Flames, and finally, Heralds of the Siege. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you guys. I'm not gonna go through all 17 of these one by one, because frankly, I value my sanity, and also because Games Workshop went absolutely feral with anthologies towards the back end of the Horus Heresy. Like seriously, did they think jamming random short stories together would make people forget they weren't progressing the plot at all? Here's what you need to know about these though. They're a compilation of short stories, little side missions, flashbacks, Legion scraps, and random events sprinkled throughout the Heresy timeline. Think of them as filler episodes of the Horus Heresy. Some are cool, most are forgettable. Are any of them essential though? Not really. Some standout stories exist, like The Last Church, where the Emperor debates religion with the final priest on Terra, or Crimson Fist, where the Imperial Fists almost shank Perturabo at fall. But you can find these stories online or summarized in 5 minutes. If I had to use a metaphor to compare these books to something, I would compare them to peanuts. You don't need them, they won't fill you up, but you might crack into them someday when you're bored and craving something salty. So the anthologies are a skip. Every single one. Unless you're a completionist or you've developed a mysterious craving for the literary equivalent of side quests, if you're here for the main plot, these books are 100% skippable. Save your money and your brain cells. Now we're talking.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
These 2 books, 1,000 Suns and Prospero Burns, certified bangers. They cover the same event, the burning of Prospero, but from 2 radically different perspectives. 1,000 Suns gives us a tragic, slow-motion car crash that is Magnus the Red and his nerd legion. trying to warn the Imperium about Horus, only to get smacked by the Emperor like a kid caught sneaking snacks before dinner. Prospero Burns is the Space Wolf side of the story, showing their brutal, we-don't-do-subtle approach to justice as they're sent to bring down their psychic bookworm cousins. Both books are incredible, not just in storytelling, but in how they build character. A Thousand Suns makes you sympathize with Magnus' slow descent into "oops, I broke the webway." Meanwhile, Prospero Burns actually makes Leman Russ seem like a fully realized character, rather than just a Viking bro with anger issues. That's a win in my book. If you want to understand why Magnus did nothing wrong, or why the Space Wolves aren't just space-faring frat boys, these are essential books. For lore, drama, betrayal, and one of the most pivotal moments in the heresy, these two books are must-reads. Plus, psychic space sorcerers getting obliterated by feral ice wolves? Come on, what's not to love? Books 13 and 17. The dynamic duo of why the hell did you even write this? Let's start with Nemesis. On paper, this book sounds badass. An elite kill team of Imperial assassins from all the different temples teaming up to do the impossible. Assassinate Horus Lubercal. Sounds like Suicide Squad, but in space, right? Wrong. Somehow, they take this baller premise and make it boring as hell. Like watching paint dry on a distant moon boring. And shock of all shocks, the assassins fail. So nothing changes in the plot, and we just spent 400 pages on a mission that goes absolutely nowhere. Sick. Then we have the Outcast Dead. Oh boy, this book is like someone took a bunch of interesting ideas, dumped them in a blender, added 5 pounds of cocaine, hit puree, and published it. It's about a group of traitor Marines imprisoned on Terra. Somehow, they escape in the most nonsensical way possible. At one point, I'm not joking here, a completely naked Space Marine punches through a custodes and yanks out his spine. What? This isn't just a lore break, it's a war crime against canon. It's confusing, it's weird, it's like reading a fever dream, and not in a cool, warp-tainted visions of the future way. These books are the heresy equivalent of someone farting in an elevator and walking out. You're stuck with it, and it's unpleasant, but you don't have to just sit there and suffer, close the book, and walk away. Quite possibly the best arc in the entire Horus Heresy, and I'm saying that with my whole chest. The first heretic, Know No Fear, and Betrayer are the bee's knees. If you could only read 3 books from this entire series, make it these. This is the equivalent of the Shibuya arc from JJK or the Sasuke retrieval arc from Naruto. It's the oh shit Warhammer actually slaps moment. The first heretic tells the tale of the tragic fall of Logar and the word bearers. And honestly, it hits hard. You understand why Logar is so pissed. Big E literally comes down and says, "Stop being religious nerds," and then blows up their cities. Logar gets publicly shamed and thus spirals into chaos with a slow burn 40-year-long plot. This book is so good at showing that the betrayal didn't start with Horus, it started with Logar, way before anyone was paying attention. Also, this book introduced Argyll Tau, who is the absolute GOAT. Straight up, best written, possessed Marine. He's like if you fused a demon with an absolute bro. His arc is tragic, beautiful, and badass. If you don't read the first heretic, you're a loser. Next we have Know No Fear. This is where the trap is sprung. The word bearers ambush the Ultramarines at Calth, and it goes especially hard. The betrayal is brutal, the action is relentless, and Rabute Gilliman, an absolute king. This book showcases him as both a brilliant tactician and a protective father figure to his legion. At one point, he fights in space without a helmet on. The man is built different. Both legions get major spotlight and respect as this book kicks off the Shadow Crusade, the full-on invasion of Ultramar. And the pacing, so clean. If the first heretic is the spark, this is the explosion. Finally, we have Betrayer. Holy shit. This book is peak Warhammer. Maybe the best in the entire series. This is Return of the King, but make it 40k. It follows Angron and Logar as they unleash hell across the Ultramar system. And somehow it manages to make both of these madmen sympathetic and terrifying. You get not one, but two legendary bromances. Angron and Logar, the two traitor Primarchs, and Karn and Argiel Tau, the emotional support murder friends. The book balances epic battles and gut-wrenching dialogue flawlessly. You get deep character insights, horrifying war crimes, and enough bloody action to stain your soul. The ending is absolutely insane, but I won't spoil it, just know it hits. All three books are must-reads, no question. But Betrayer, that's the Bible of Warhammer 40k. If you're gonna read one book in your entire grim dark life, make it Betrayer. We're back with a couple of Loyalist Legion novels, Deliverance Lost and Fear to Tread. Both solid in lore relevance, but very different in execution. First up, we have the Emo Bird Boy book. This one follows Corvus Corax and the Raven Guard after they get absolutely brutalized at the drop site massacre. So what's Corax's master plan? Rebuild his legion. How, you ask? First, he asks the Emperor for more of his semen, basically gene seed. Then he uses some secret knowledge to fast-track a bunch of new Raven Guard recruits. And that's about as far as the plan goes before it completely faceplants. Because of course, the Alpha Legion pulls an Uno reverse card and steals the Super Semen, mixing it with a healthy dose of demon juice. Shockingly, this leads to a catastrophic warp-fueled monstrosities. The book's biggest achievement is explaining why the Raven Guard basically vanished from the Heresy after Istvan. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not amazing either. Think of it as the Please Understand arc of the Raven Guard. It's an optional read. If you're into the Sneaky Boys or Alpha Legion shenanigans, you might enjoy it. Otherwise, you're not missing out on much. Next, we have Fear to Tread. This is how you write a Loyalist Legion. This is the Blood Angels' big moment. And let me tell you, it's metal as hell. This book covers Horus's trap friend Sanguinius and his sons at the Cygnus Prime system, where he tries to corrupt them into becoming Team Chaos. What do we get? Warp horror, chaos traps, and greater demons getting bodied. There's this amazing moment where Sanguinius just says, nah, to Chaos, whips out his angelic wings, and slaughters two greater demons like it's a Tuesday. The whole book is about the Blood Angels' first real exposure to Chaos, and Sanguinius shining like the glorious hawk boy he is. Plus, this book sets up how the Blood Angels end up in Imperium Secundus, which is very important for the second half of the Heresy. Fear to Tread is a must-read. It's the first and last real Blood Angels novel in the Heresy, and it's packed with lore, action, and Primarch badassery. Angels Exterminatus is one of those weird books that sits firmly in the middle of the Horus Heresy lineup. It's not bad, but it's definitely not amazing either. It's a cool story told in a kind of clunky way. The main focus is on the Emperor's children, the Iron Warriors, and the Shattered Legions. The book mostly follows Fulgrim, leading Perturabo on a wild goose chase into the Eye of Terror under the guise of hunting down some powerful ancient weapon. In reality, it's just Fulgrim setting himself up to become a demon Primarch, and Perturabo gets played like an absolute fool. That said, their dynamic is one of the best parts of the book. Perturabo, or as I call him, Peter Turbo, constantly dunks on Fulgrim and clearly hates everything about him, which is honestly hilarious and weirdly satisfying. The book does a great job showing how far the Emperor's children have fallen, and the Iron Warriors' horrified reactions to their depravity really hit. There are also some awesome moments with the Shattered Legions pulling off covert operations and even managing to snipe Fulgrim in the fucking face, which he survives because plot armor is thicker than a Land Raider. The problem is that the story just drags at some points, and some of the pacing feels kinda off. Like the whole thing just exists to get Fulgrim to his ascension moment. Still, despite its flaws, I'd say this one is still a must-read. You get major developments for 2 traitor legions, some genuinely great character moments, and Fulgrim's full transformation into a snake demon. It's definitely worth it, unless you hate fun or disagree with me. Which would be wrong, of course, because I'm a talking cow and therefore always right. Where do I even begin with these books? Vulkan Lives, Deathfire, and Old Earth are technically must-reads if you care about Vulkan and the Salamanders. But there's no fucking way I'd ever recommend these to another living human being. These books are awful. As I already covered in my Vulkan video, Nick Kime's writing just doesn't do the character justice. And the result is the most mind-numbingly boring saga in the entire Horus Heresy. I can literally give you a condensed version and save you hours of pain. Unkillable Fire Guy and his sons get absolutely wrecked. Vulkan gets captured, tortured, escapes with a big hammer, gets stabbed in the butt by some rando named John, and supposedly dies. His legion takes his body back to Nocturne, a guy jumps into a volcano, and somehow Vulkan returns. The final book, Old Earth, is him literally just driving back to Terra like it's an old road trip movie with no cool vibes. I don't care how much you like Vulkan or his pyromaniac sons, these books suck, and I declare them 100% skippable. You're not missing anything except regret. Next up, we've got the Imperium Secundus saga. That's Unremembered Empire, Pharaohs, Angels of Caliban, and Ruinstorm. These books follow Guilliman, the Lion, and Sanguinius as they build their own little empire because they think Big Daddy E is dead. I'd honestly say most of these books are must-reads. They cover the formation of the Imperium Secundus, the chaotic hunt for Conrad Kurz, which includes a ton of Primarch duels, his eventual capture after a whole mess of shenanigans, and the Loyalists' return to Terra. The Night Lords, Ultramarines, Dark Angels, and Blood Angels all get great moments, especially the Night Lords, who steal a lot of these scenes surprisingly. We even get to see why the Tyranids are heading for our galaxy in Pharos, which is cool as hell. Now I know I already covered Angels of Caliban, and it's a kind of the odd man out once again. It's part of the Unremembered Empire and the Dark Angels trilogy, which I know I've already gone over, but I feel like it still belongs in this series as well. I'd still classify it as an optional read. Even though there are cool duels and Kurz's capture, you can still skip it if you're not that deep into the lore. Unremembered Empire, on the other hand, is an absolute must-read. It's just awesome, period. Pharos is great too, but its events are not as essential, so I'd call it optional, though I'd highly recommend it. Ruinstorm is a tough one. It's not amazing, but it's crucial for understanding how Sanguinius gets to Terra and why the Lion and Guilliman don't. Because of that setup for the Siege of Terra, I'd say Ruinstorm is a must-read despite its flaws. Next up, we've got 2 White Scars books, Scars and The Path of Heaven. And holy shit, they're good. These aren't just solid Horus Heresy entries, they're some of the best in the entire series. They finally answer the question, what the hell have the White Scars been doing this whole time? Turns out, a lot. These books dive into the brutal internal conflict within the Legion, with nearly half of them turning traitor, only to be slapped back into line by their extremely disappointed dad, Jagatai Khan. From there, we follow the White Scars on their high-octane, warp-ravaged journey back to Terra. More importantly, these books give us a deep, nuanced look at Jagatai Khan himself. Far from the generic speed-obsessed bro he's sometimes painted as, he's complex, cunning, and honestly one of the more underrated Primarchs until these books gave him the respect he deserves. Between the character development, the incredible pacing, and the vital role they play in the overarching narrative of the heresy, these books are 100% must-reads. Whether you're a fan of the White Scars or just want more high-quality Horus Heresy content, these two are essential. Damnation of TYPHUS is actually a pretty solid book. Gives the Iron Hands some much-needed love and expands their lore in some interesting ways. You've got a shattered force of survivors dealing with grief, trauma, and the creeping madness of the warp, all while trying to hold themselves together on a nightmare death world. There are some genuinely cool characters, eerie horror vibes, and a strong emotional core, especially for the fans of the Shattered Legions. That said, it's 100% skippable. As good as it is, the Damnation of TYPHUS doesn't really add anything major to the larger Horus Heresy storyline. It's a side story through and through. It's worth a read if you're into the Iron Hands or war horror, but not essential for understanding the main plot. So yeah, decent book, but unless you're doing a full read-through or love the Iron Hands, feel free to pass. Master of Mankind and Praetorian of Dorn are a dynamic duo that dives deep into what's happening on Terra during the Horus Heresy as the Emperor and Rogal Dorn stand their ground against the traitor legions. Master of Mankind takes you into the war in the Webway with the Emperor at the forefront of the battle. It's a top-tier book and honestly one of my favorites in the whole series. You get to see the Emperor in all his glory, and the Custodes fight in the Webway is a highlight. If you've ever wanted to know what the Emperor was up to during the heresy, this book's for you. Then there's the Praetorian of Dorn, which focuses on Dorn and the Imperial Fists as they uncover a sinister Alpha Legion plot on Terra. The book gives a ton of love to both Dorn and Alpharius, exploring their dynamic and how the Fists are holding it together as the traitors close in. The tension, the battles, and the mystery behind the Alpha Legion's movements are gripping. Both books are absolute must-reads and some of the best in the series. If you're into lore-heavy, character-driven stories that flesh out the Imperium's last stand, you can't go wrong with these two. The Crimson King is a novel that delves into the aftermath of both Prospero Burns and A Thousand Suns, focusing on the A Thousand Suns' quest to rebuild their shattered Primarch, Magnus the Red. While it explores the attempt to piece together Magnus' soul, the execution of the story just doesn't land. There's too much going on and the plot feels overly convoluted, making it quite a drag to get through. The characters also come off as acting pretty foolish at times, which detracts from the overall experience. For fans of the A Thousand Suns, it might be still worth checking out, as it provides some insight into their journey after Prospero Burns. However, if you're not particularly invested in the A Thousand Suns, this book just doesn't add much weight to the overall narrative, especially since Magnus shows up fully restored during the Siege of Terra. Therefore, it's more of an optional read, worth considering for completionists, but not essential to the broader story. Titan Death is the second to last book in the Horus Heresy series and is essentially a standalone action-heavy novel that feels disconnected from the main narrative. The book centers around the massive battle between the Imperium and the traitor legions involving Titans, which is billed as the biggest battle of the Horus Heresy. However, it doesn't add anything substantial to the overarching plot. The story is primarily focused on large-scale battles, bolter fire, and giant mega lasers, making it more about spectacle than meaningful lore. While it's not a bad book per se, it lacks the depth and impact of other entries in the series. If you're looking for major developments in the heresy, you can safely skip Titan Death without missing much in terms of the main story arc. Now we finally get to the big bad of the Horus Heresy, Horus himself. The man who truly is the Warhammer 40k. His plot development is covered in 3 books: Vengeful Spirit, Wolfsbane, and Slaves to Darkness. So why did I put these books at the very end? Well, for some reason, Titan death happens before Slaves to Darkness? Yeah, I don't get it either. But I also think it's better to read this trilogy last, since Horus is the main antagonist and his story is super crucial. These books, though, they're just alright. They're all must-reads due to the importance of what happens to them, but the quality and content within them is just kinda mid. Vengeful Spirit is probably the weakest of the three, focusing on Horus' steady descent into chaos and how he gains even more power from the planet of Moloch. It sets up the big events to come, but it feels a bit slow and too drawn out. Next comes Wolfsbane, where we get a pretty solid duel between Leman Russ and the War Master. It's a good fight, but like many moments in the Heresy, it suffers from the silliness of plot armor. Russ initially wins, but of course, Horus is defeated, he's just wounded, which sets up what happens in the final book of this trilogy, Slaves to Darkness. Slaves to Darkness is one of the last books in the series, and arguably one of the better ones. It's centered around Horus trying to heal from the wound given to him by Russ, and delves deeper into his eternal battle with chaos as the final confrontation with the Emperor draws closer. While not flawless, it provides a crucial look at the state of the traitor Primarchs right before the siege begins. The final book in this bloated series, The Buried Dagger, is definitely one way to end the Horus Heresy. It's essentially broken into three stories, one following the Death Guard's fall to Nurgle, another exploring Mortarion's early life on Barbarous, and the third detailing the founding of the Grey Knights. Overall, the book is just okay. The Death Guard parts are awesome and provide some much needed depth to Mortarion. We also get a chance to see how much of a jerk TYPHUS is, who could easily compete with Erebus in a CUNT contest. However, the pacing of the Grey Knight parts isn't great and really slows down almost to a crawl. While the Buried Dagger is important for understanding the Death Guard's fall, it's not a particularly amazing book overall. As a result, I classify it as an optional read, especially if you're more interested in the Death Guard and Mortarion than the foundation of the Grey Knights. So now that we've gone through every single book in the Horus Heresy, let's summarize all the must-reads. First, we have the first four books, Horus Rising, False Gods, A Galaxy in Flames, and Flight of the Einstein. These are essential for setting the stage for the Heresy and the beginning of the downfall of the Imperium. Then we move on to two traitor-centric books, Fulgrim and Legion, focusing on the Emperor's children and the Alpha Legion's fall. Following that is Mechanicum, the only book that focuses on the Adeptus Mechanicus, diving into the rise of the Dark Mechanicum and the beginning of the Siege of Mars. Next is the monumental Fall of the 1,000 Suns. This consists of 1,000 Suns and Prospero Burns, which center on Magnus and the destruction of Prospero, marking a key moment in the Heresy where the webway is broken, preventing the Emperor from intervening. Then we have some incredible works. The First Heretic, Know No Fear, and Betrayer. These three books are absolutely essential and are the pinnacle of the writing in the series. After that, we get Fear to Tread, the only book dedicated to the Blood Angels, where Horus attempts to destroy them at Cygnus Prime. Moving on, we get Angels Exterminatus, which explores the Emperor's children, and the Iron Warriors, and Fulgrim's eventual ascension to Demon Primarch status. After that, we dive into the Imperium Secundus saga, consisting of the Unremembered Empire, Pharaohs, and Ruinstorm, with Angels of Caliban once again being optional unless you're really into watching Lionel Johnson be weird with his schizophrenic brother. This saga shows what Sanguinius, Gilliman, and the Lion were up to while trying to make it to Terra before the siege begins. Then comes the White Scars and Jagatai Khan with Scars and Path to Heaven, detailing their decision to align with the Emperor and their quest to return to Terra. Following that, we have two books that are absolute must-reads to show what's been going on Terra, Master of Mankind and Praetorian of Dorn. These tell the story of what's happening on Terra, focusing on the Emperor and why he's not smacking Horus's butt for being a big fat jerk. Master of Mankind is outstanding, offering a first-hand look at the war in the Webway and how badly Magnus messed everything up. Praetorian of Dorn is also a great read, with the Alpha Legion and Imperial Fists facing off in a battle of deception with a great Primarch duel at the end. And then we hit the big bad, Horus himself. Vengeful Spirit, Wolfsbane, and Slaves of Darkness are all centered around Horus and his rise to power. Not the greatest books, but they're essential for the plot as they set up the final battle for the throne world. Slaves of Darkness is definitely the standout here. All in all, out of the 54 books in the series, you'll only need to read 24 to get the full experience. It's kind of wild how many books you can skip. In regards to how you should read the must-reads, I would suggest this order. Realistically, the order of the books doesn't matter too much outside of the first 4, and the last couple ones since the books bounce around so much. It might be a little confusing, but remember this is a chronological order, so books like the First Heretic and Legion will be first since they occur way before the Heresy. Specifically, First Heretic, which happens 40 years before the Dropsite Massacre. So here's a time-friendly reading list for the must-reads because I'm a nice cow and want to save your sanity. I even added the in-universe years because I'm that considerate. So first we have the First Heretic, followed up by Legion. Then we have the first 4 books in the series, Horus Rising, False Gods, Galaxy in Flames, and Flight of the Einstein. And then we have the 1,000 Suns duo, 1,000 Suns and Prospero Burns, followed up by the Master of Mankind, then Mechanicum, then Fear to Tread, followed up by Fulgrim, No Fear, Angels Exterminatus, and then the Goat Betrayer. Then we have Scars, Vengeful Spirit, the Unremembered Empire, Pharaohs, Praetorian of Dorn, the Path of Heaven, Ruinstorm, Wolfsbane, and Slaves to Darkness. Slaves to Darkness is the final book before the Siege of Terra finally kicks off. Alright, let's say you don't want to take out a mortgage to read this entire series, because these books are expensive as dick, and you'd rather not spend 600 hours in the warp. Here's the tightest and cheapest route to understanding the heresy before the siege starts. So we have the first 4 books again, Horus Rising, False Gods, Galaxy in Flames, and Flight of the Einstein. And then we have 1,000 Suns, Prospero Burns, and then Master of Mankind, Praetorian of Dorn, and finally Slaves to Darkness once again. Only 9 books. You'll miss some spicy gems like the First Heretic or Betrayer, but plot-wise, you're good. You understand who Horus is, why everyone's mad, how Magnus did nothing wrong, and why the Emperor sits on the Golden Throne. So guys, we just walked through the entire 54-book Horus Heresy series, classifying everything into must-reads, optionals, and skips, broke them down chronologically, then gave you a tight 9-book fast pass through the whole thing. If you like this video, or more importantly, if you hate Horus's bald-ass head, drop a like. Comment below what your favorite Horus Heresy book is, and which one makes you want to slam your head against the nearest bolter. The next video will be me explaining which Demon Primarch is the strongest, followed up why Games Workshop drugged the Eldar and stole their kidneys. I'm pretty excited for those ones, so stay tuned. And as always guys, stay milked. I'll see you in the next video.